Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we're here to talk about the most common Enneagram types for ESTJs, which is the 1, the 3, and the 8. And so we'll be going into a deep dive into each of these manifestations. So before we do that, I'm wondering if we can all introduce ourselves. And so Heather, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Sure, I'm Heather. I live in London. I spent the last 20 years living in India, and I just moved back to London. I've been studying Enneagram for about, I think, 5 or 6 years. I'm also an HR director, so I work a lot with people, do a lot of coaching as well. So yeah, I'm obsessed by the Enneagram and MBTI as well, and figuring my way around the systems.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on. I also have a little bit of a background in HR, so some camaraderie there. And Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Pluth. I have the Twitter handle Amy the ESTJ. You can find me there. But I've been into Myers-Briggs for about 8 years now, and I've brushed past Enneagram quite frequently in this setup. And so I wouldn't say I know a ton, but I know enough to get around the system.
Amy has been a presence in the type community for quite a long time on Twitter and other spaces. And Wendy.
Hi, my name is Wendy Kauffman. I live in Arizona, and I'm a life coach, and I've been studying MBTI for 15 years to figure out my marriage. Then I homeschooled my kids using it, and now I life coach using the system. I've only recently discovered that I'm an Enneagram 3, so that's been a whole new rabbit hole for me.
Amy and Wendy and I were writing an ESTJ book together, and we realized through Wendy writing that she is extremely Enneagram 3, and that's how we helped her on the path of figuring out her Enneagram type. Cool. And so, hi, my name is Joyce. I'm an MBTI master practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. I also help people on the discovery process of figuring out their best fit type, and I coach people as well. All right. And so we shall get started. The Enneagram 8. This is typically known as the challenger online. Self-confident, domineering, assertive, action-oriented, caring, pragmatic, strong, controlling, determined, decisive, and direct are the surface level traits of this type to some people. Of course, Enneagram is not behavior. And so in the mental center, the fixation of this Enneagram type is vengeance. And the holy idea is holy truth. What is your experience of vengeance and holy truth, Heather?
So vengeance is interesting. Vengeance for me will happen, but it only happens when somebody in my circle, because 8s are all about our people, right? Somebody in that circle crosses a line. There's like this invisible line, and it's pretty high. The bar's pretty high. I'm quite forgiving, but when someone crosses that line, then my idea of vengeance is I don't take revenge, and I'm not the kind of person that would kind of get into wanting kind of my pound of flesh, but I'm just like, I'm done. You're dead to me. Like, I just disconnect. And this has happened repeatedly. I remember boyfriends in the past before I got married, obviously, like chasing after me and saying, but let's get back together. And I'm like, no, you crossed the line. They're like, what line? And I'm like, you did whatever it was, right? So that's vengeance for me. It's just like, I'm done.
To bring us to the emotional center, the passion of the 8 is lust, and a higher virtue of this is innocence. And so I'm wondering, how do you experience lust?
Lust for life. I think the 8s are always described as being very much larger than life, right? So I mean, I do nothing by halves. So if I'm going to do yoga, which I love, it has to be hot yoga. It has to be like 40 degrees. It has to be super intense. If I decide to do fasting or go on a diet, it has to be like all or nothing. If I drink a lot or I drink nothing at all. It's just this lust for, and I think just sucking everything out of life. I mean, I sometimes feel that I just never stop and I exhaust everybody around me. But to me, that there's so much to be sucked from life and so much to enjoy. So I think that's how I kind of express that lust.
Yeah, there is that intensity of experience. And so oftentimes Enneagram 8 gets associated with ESTP and ESFP, but I noticed a lot of extroverted thinking dominants might also view themselves as 8s too. I noticed ENTJs and ESTJs who identify as 8s, because there's an element of being a person with a strong personality that's associated with 8, and also disliking vulnerability and weakness, which ESTJs and ENTJs share with inferior FI. So there's that. That brings us into the defense mechanism of the 8, which is denial. They want to deny their vulnerability to maintain the image of being strong. And so I'm wondering, how do you experience your defense mechanism?
So I almost never cry, and I almost never like to be weak or feel myself to be weak. But if I get triggered, or if something kind of lands that I react to very strongly, which is normally something around unfairness, or somebody misunderstanding me, or these other things which really kind of get to the heart of me, or mistreatment of others, because there's a very strong justice theme that happens as well. Then I go to the other extreme, and there will be this massive, uncontrollable, like, sobbing, and it happens once in a blue moon, because it really isn't something. I mean, I know people who cry all the time, and I'm like, how can you cry so much? I mean, I don't understand, but I think it's that, right? So it's this, because there's this strong shell and this refusal to be vulnerable, and there's this, I will not stop, and I will not fail, and I will not sleep, and I will not rest, and I will not cry. When that does break down, it's a really over extreme kind of reaction, which takes me by surprise.
Yeah, you're caught off guard by your strong emotional reaction that bursts out. It makes you feel out of control to go deeply into that emotion.
So I'm like right in the loo, right in the ladies' room, kind of going, nobody can see me like this, right? I cannot be having a breakdown in front of anybody. And I've never let anybody see me in that state. I'm talking about work. I mean, it happens once in every workplace. It's like a pattern that just somebody will do something, and then I kind of run and nobody sees it.
Hiding that vulnerability. Is it because you want to look like a good resource to other people, or what about showing that vulnerability is so?
The vulnerability is just like, it's just icky, and I just can't.
What traits of the 8 do you really relate to? Like, what convinces you that you are an 8?
So interestingly, when I first discovered the Enneagram, which I think was, as I said, about 5-6 years ago, I mistyped as a 3, because they seem very similar to me. In fact, it was a very simple, I think it was the Riso test, very simple 2-paragraph test. They said, oh, you're a 3. And I was like, okay, fine. And then they kind of went around the numbers, and then they got to 8. And I was like, oh, this could also be me. And then when I dug a little deeper, I looked at the motivation. I'm very, very motivated by fairness, justice, and I don't care so much about the image part. But then I discovered, well, that's not true. I do care about the image, but not obsessively. So there is a bit of that happening. And then when I discovered my Tritype, which is 836, it kind of made sense, because there was a bit of the 3 working with the 8, but the primary deep motivation is not to be vulnerable, to be in control, and to seek justice for myself and others. And that's played out, that whole justice thing, where I'll jump in and want to kind of rescue people in a way that just wants to restore fairness to a situation. I mean, I hate to see people treated unfairly, and I'll fight. I'll go and literally fight for people. When I've got somebody out of jail before, I literally went in and kind of made that happen to get them out of jail, because I just can't see it.
8s are okay with being the boss and also ripping the Band-Aid off of painful situations. It's like, okay, the way to extract this cancer is to actually do surgery right now and to do something about it. Otherwise, nothing will get done. 8s oftentimes instigate. They're one of the most extroverted Enneagram types. The 8, the 3, and the 7 are known as the extroverted types. They initiate action. And so
you don't have to be the boss, which is interesting, because I'm happy to not be the boss. Right now, I'm reporting to somebody who's younger than me. She's extremely competent, and I have no need to want to assert myself and be the boss because she's fantastic and I'm learning from her. But in a situation where there is no leader, I think the 8 will always step in and take that position.
Definitely. So they'll fill in the leadership vacuum if there is no leader. They don't need to be the boss, but they know when someone's incompetent and they don't mind stepping in if they have to make sure things go well. All right. And so we will move on to the Enneagram 1, which is typically known as the reformer. So surface level traits that you may see in a 1 is that they're principled, self-controlled, disciplined, objective, conscientious, structured, idealistic, sensible, and discerning. We'll also be talking about their mental center. The fixation of the 1 is resentment. The holy idea of the 1 is holy perfection. How does resentment play out in you, Amy?
I was noting when Heather was talking about, she has a very big sense of what's fair. I was thinking, I do too, but I don't tend to use the word fair. I tend to use the term right. Like, it doesn't have to be a difference between, like, I'm looking at 2 people and judging, what's fair between them. I'm usually looking more at, like, an objective standard. Like, this is the standard, and then who landed closest to the standard, apparently you're going to be the one I'm going to judge in favor of as opposed to the other person. And so resentment has to do with, well, this was the standard. This was the, somebody was disciplined enough to do this, this is what was supposed to happen. And then either, someone, broke the standard, abused the standard, or just ignored the standard. And that is frustrating because I won't. It's extremely frustrating because I can't break the standards that have been set. It's very, and even changing my standards is something that is very, was a learning process as an adult to learn to change my standards. And it's definitely something I still have to think through and look at. And it's getting faster in some areas, but there are still definitely like core principles that are never going to change ever for me.
Yeah, and so you see this element of the Enneagram 1 that's looking for what's good or bad or right or wrong, and having a very clear line that can sometimes be a little bit black and white about it too.
Yeah, gray is very hard for me. Gray is hard. I don't like gray. I want it in black or white. Like, gray is extremely frustrating. Like, it's one of those, like, even to the point of like, fine, I don't want to make the decision if you're going to ask me to make a gray call. Like, can somebody else just make it? Because then it's their decision, and now it's black and white because they made a choice. Like, I would rather just forego having to make the choice if we're going to do grays too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so resentment in the 1 is also called judging. So there's a judging quality of the 1.
I judge everything all the time. Like, there is always, and I know we say in Myers-Briggs, your judging function is how you come to a decision. But for me, it's not just coming to a decision. It's having like an opinion on everything. Like, everything has an opinion, and it's all quantitative and qualitative of, this was good, that was bad. This is, really good. This was, it's, and so I find that, more than just about anybody else, I am very good with last minute opinion questions. Like, you're in a group and they're like, hey, what do you think of this? And I have an answer, even if I have never literally thought of that before. I have an answer because somewhere in all, I think the 1 adding to the TE and the FI just makes it so I always have an opinion. Now, sometimes I will freely admit it's not a well thought out opinion. I may change that by the end of the conversation, but there's always one.
Yeah. So there's that highly opinionated nature, needing to have that black or white stance, needing to know their moral opinion about something. And also ones they feel over responsible and have a hard time relaxing sometimes until the over responsibility is tackled with. There's one right way to do things, or needing things to be done in the right way.
The one right way thing gets me in trouble all the time because I think because I think there's one right way, and being an ESTJ, it tends to translate for me into, I will teach you what the one right way was. Like if I catch you doing it the wrong way, I'm going to sit here and take the time to teach you to do it the right way. And that has gotten me into trouble so many times, because people look at me and they're either like, hey, it's not your job to teach me this, or I didn't need to know this, or, why are you so bossy? And it's like, well, and sometimes really, I'm not trying to be bossy. I'm like, it's just, you were doing it wrong. Like, why not fix this? Why not do this the better way? Like, like, why are you doing this the inefficient, unhelpful way? You could be doing this better, faster, whatever, like the way that makes more people happy, sometimes. And it's like, why are you doing that? But to me, it comes out as literally the wrong way. And that's the terminology I use too. Like and sometimes they're doing it the wrong way isn't morally wrong. It's just different. But that was very hard for me to learn, to realize that for me, because it's black and white, well, that was, to me, it's right or it's wrong. And like, so wait, no, it's not wrong. It's just different, and that's okay. I don't have, that was a very hard lesson to learn.
And so now we're going to move on to the emotional center. So the fixation of the Enneagram 1 is anger. And so their virtue is serenity, the way that they can have a higher vibration version of what they struggle with. And so how do you experience those two things?
Well, I would say when I haven't thought through things, I get angry over them. When I haven't thought it through, when I haven't taken time to reflect on it. But when I actually understand what is really going on and other things, I can move from anger to that serenity of going, okay, this will pass by. This will, like, I will make it through the storm. Like, I do not have to be moved by this. I can do what's right, no matter if everybody else is driving me crazy or they're doing what's wrong. I can still do what's right. I will still be okay. I can know that I made the right choices no matter what happened. And so, it's because serenity is not just like, serenity isn't really just like going with the flow. It's literally calmness in the middle of the storm. That's what serenity is. So, so that same force of anger that I could have pushed out across to everybody else, it just becomes the power to just like self-contain and be like, okay, it's all going to pieces, but I'm not going to pieces. I can be the lighthouse in the middle of the storm. I can be the actual calm person in the middle of everything going horribly bad and sideways. And everybody else is looking around, going around going, losing their minds. And I don't tend to, and it's not that I wouldn't agree that things were bad right now. I could agree that, this is a horrible situation to be in, but that doesn't mean that I am losing my cool over it. I have noticed, I'm married to an INFP for many, many years. And I have noticed when something bad happens, unless it directly happened to me, in which case, I'm struggling. If it's a us or a him thing, he always loses it first and has, the emotional breakdown, does all that. And mine always comes later. And I think it comes from this ability to be serene and to like, and distance myself from my personal emotions at times if I need to, but also just be like, no, I'll be fine. I'll get through this. And it also becomes when you really get to the highest vibration of it, you realize that you could have used your anger to sweep people up in your path and get them going on the same path as you and channel all these people using anger. But when you realize you can do the same thing with serenity of, no, really, like, we can all calm down in the middle of this. Like I can drag you into my serenity as well and get which is really awesome feeling when you can do that. Because I have 4 kids and I routinely babysit lots more kids, and so my house is very loud and noisy all the time, and they're just fine with me. I grew up the oldest of 9 kids, so I'm totally used to this much chaos going on. But when I want all the kids to calm down, or I'm working with larger groups of children, I can do that. I mean, I've done it. I've unfortunately, have worked with junior hires. I have had to do that through anger, to get them all to like knock it off and get with the program. But I've also been able to do it through serenity and be like, no, 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 we're all, calming down. We're all getting with the program. We're all, like, and it's very effective, actually.
Excellent. And so thank you for that illustration, Amy. But the one's relationship to anger, sometimes it is seething anger or repressed anger, because it almost feels like you're not being rational and objective and moral. If you're letting out your anger, you're letting your emotions control you. So the one is actually a type that likes to stay in control of their anger. So it might seethe out. They might give you that finger wag of disapproval, but they try to remain in control of their emotions, just like the 8 or the 3 doesn't happen to their emotions as much.
The stare down, that's something, my mom, when I was growing up, she's not a one, but like, you could always tell, like, if we were sitting in church and we were acting up, because she'd give us this look, and you knew that, judgment was going to happen if you didn't, like, stop pulling somebody's hair or whatever was happening. And I definitely find myself doing that. And it's very uncomfortable to let it out too much, because when I do, it's extremely weaponized. I have found, like, when my anger actually does boil over, there's very little control. And because I'm an ESTJ, my FI tends to come to the fore, and my FI will find every single little vulnerability and exploit it to the hilt, and it will be very painful. Like, I will, it's not pretty.
Interesting. And another quality of the one too is the inner critic. I think most people relate to having an inner critic, but it's not necessarily in the way that ones have it. Ones have it way more often, like every second of every hour of every day. And it's typically they have a stronger inner critic towards themselves than they are towards you. So you might be feeling like the one is critiquing you or your moral presence, or whether you're right or wrong very often, but they critique themselves just as much, if not more, than how they critique you. And so yeah, everyone has an inner critic, but they don't have the Enneagram 1 critic.
I mean, literally after every like shift at work, there are times where I'm like, oh, I could have done that. Like, it's this tiny thing, but if I had done this, it would have been 5 seconds flat faster. Really? I needed to be 5 seconds faster there? Like, I don't, like, it's 1 second faster. Should I really beat myself over the fact that I didn't do that 1 second faster? Probably, I really shouldn't, but it feels that way to me afterwards, going, oh, I could have done this 1 second faster if I just did, these things. And so, rearranged it and done better.
Makes sense. Are there any more traits of the one that you relate to, Amy, that we didn't mention?
I find it interesting that it's both idealistic and sensible for the one. Because I often describe myself as a idealistic pragmatist, realist, but a lot of people go, that doesn't mix. And it's like, well, no, I have all the ideals, but I just know how we're not going to get there. So I'm not going to bother with the how we're not going to get there. I'm just going to focus on the things I can do to get to those ideals. Because honestly, I'm a pretty happy, upbeat person as a general rule of thumb. Like, I see the glass more half full, I would say, but probably I just look at the glass and just say it's a half full glass, and wouldn't give it either one of those descriptions. But it and being self-controlled. I mean, really, to be honest, from a very young age, I was not like younger than 12. I mean, okay, last age I consistently ever got in trouble with, I'm not kidding you, was before I was 5. By the time I was 5, I was never consistently getting in trouble with anybody ever. I rarely got in trouble, even less, but by the time I was 12, I mean, I could have been pretty much a functioning adult, like, as far as, my sense of responsibility and what I did and things, all through high school. Well, my mom had kids and she had remarried. So when I was in high school, so she was extra over busy without time for me. But I found, like, really looking back, I was so self-controlled, principled, disciplined, all this, had the structure in my life that she and, my parents didn't worry about me. They assumed I had it all together. They didn't feel the need to stop and give me advice on things because I already had, I'd already set up good things. It was very, very rare, which, I would say, that's something just because you have a good kid, a kid who is, like me or something like that, don't just like ignore that. Take the time to like walk them still through stuff, because there are still things I could have done better had somebody actually bothered to take the time to deal with that, talk with that stuff with me about.
Yeah. And so the Enneagram 1 also has a defense mechanism of reaction formation. So this is when they suppress the parts of themselves that they deem bad and try to act in accordance to what they deem as good, even if it may be ignoring their natural impulses or reactions to things. So let's move on to the Enneagram 3, which is commonly known as the achiever. Surface level traits that you might see in this type are that they're ambitious, image conscious, achievement driven, results oriented, charming, adaptable. And if we're to look at their mental center, their fixation is on vanity. And when they're able to overcome this, they reach the holy idea of holy hope, which means that they don't have to depend on what they do to give them a sense of value as a person or hope as a person, that they are valuable beyond what they do or how other people see them. And so, yeah, Wendy, how do you experience vanity?
Well, we've had a conversation, Joyce, about the fact that I have lived my life based off of not wanting to be certain people. So I'm not a person who runs around and desires, I would love to make a lot of money and have these big, what you would call achievements, but my achievements actually look very different in the sense where I made a list when I was young of who I was not going to be. And so then I just crafted my life around not being those people. So I would say vanity, my story is a bit interesting in the sense where I was a foster child, and in foster care, I met my ex-husband. That was second grade. I told everyone I was going to marry him. Then I grew up and married him. And then in this whole process, we raised these 3 kids. I homeschooled for 10 years. Again, achievements, send a kid to college at 14, did all these different things. But here's the thing about the vanity is that I was married to an INFP, and honestly, we were not compatible. And so we spent, and this is where I even got into MBTI, we spent 20 years upholding an image. Now, I will say we did not do it deceptively, meaning what was happening was really happening in the house. We didn't have one image we presented to someone else or the outside world, and then inside our home, it was a problem. But I do recognize that I am very conscious of how others view me. In fact, I will tell anyone who wants to talk about life that I think everyone should focus on what 5 adjectives would go on your gravestone. When someone hears your name, what do they think of? And so I'm always conscious of when they hear my name, what is going to come out of their mouth afterwards. So interestingly, we had this almost like this fairy tale life where we were 2 people that escaped. Like I came out of trauma. When I talk about achievements, like I said, my achievements aren't like I graduated first in my class or I was the star on the sports team. It was more that, hey, you know what? I left home at 18 by myself. I went to college on my own. And my claim to fame in my 40s is that I never became a statistic. all the trauma that I suffered, the foster care I was in, the alcoholic parents, I did not turn 18. The minute I could decide my life, I did. And I made all those, I mean, literally, I moved out of my house the day after I turned 18 as a senior in high school still, because I was going to not live a certain way. And so then I spent the next 20 plus years, honestly, I guess, building the image. But then what happened? What happened? I mean, sometimes I think we need to talk about the seedier sides of all these, the Enneagrams and MBTI. Well, what happened was my INFP and I decided to almost run a social experiment, and we decided to go get a better life, which meant we divorced. And our family and friends almost had a meltdown over this, because we apparently had built such an image that even our son told the two of us that he wasn't sure how he felt about marriage anymore, because he thought he had these parents that could do it so well, and now we were divorcing. And then even in the divorce, folks, even in the divorce, we had to preserve our image. It's just the truth. Now, we do truly, genuinely love each other and care for each other, despite getting divorced. But both of us were very, again, well aware of what we did not want to be. So I guess I guess when I look at my life, how I've lived it, the badges of honor I put on myself, it can be seen as vanity. But then when I got divorced, to be honest, I guess it's where all that cracked. And I think, what do they say, the Enneagram 3 is part of like a shame category? Because I felt tremendous amount of shame. So even though we felt like we were doing the best for our family and our lives, and really, actually, it has been the best for us, I felt this incredible amount of shame. It was awful. I went through an awful time of transition. People thought I was going through a midlife crisis almost. But I will say now, I want to be honest to really say it's no longer about any kind of vanity. Almost my achievements at this point are more being able to authentically discuss my challenges as an ESTJ, as an achiever. You know what? If you're an Enneagram 3, life can be very difficult for you, because if you're always chasing achievements, then you can really suffer, because in the end, the achievements don't necessarily mean anything. There's not a lot of meaning around some of these achievements unless you're changing people's lives. And so for me, I noticed that in my 40s here, I have shifted from this idea of like, I can earn this much money, I can do this, I can climb here, to more of I want to be wise, and I want to take the things, my Enneagram and my ESTJ personality, my introverted feeling kept me out of a lot of trouble. And living my life, not wanting to be certain people, did propel me into making better decisions for my life consistently over 20 some years. So now I would say I don't want to call it vanity, because I don't feel that way. I feel very humbled. I feel very humbled at life and very grateful. But I want to say that right now, I just want to make sure that I'm a walking example of my principles at all times. That's where my achievement is. If I'm waking up and I'm aligned with my values, my life reflects it, then that's where I feel good about myself.
So there's this personal growth in realizing that your achievements, your status, or how other people see you only matter so much, and that the real impact you have is making a difference in people's lives and doing what's right to you emotionally, even though 3s struggle with accessing their emotions. Is like realizing what aligns with you, what is true to you, apart from what you do. Being able to look past your doing self and being able to see yourself as opposed to a human doing as a human being. and how you can influence other human beings. So that's beautiful, Wendy. In the emotional center, there is the passion of deceit, including self-deceit. This means wanting to be seen as good in the eyes of others and wanting to be seen in a positive light. And so the higher virtue of the three is veracity. Veracity means being aware of the false image you put on and being able to know who you really are. So getting in touch with your inferior FI as an ESTJ in a way. But yeah, what is your experience with that, Wendy?
Well, as I just said, you can only really promote an image for so long if it's not the truth. Now, I will tell you that I've always been aware of that. I'm not necessarily a fake it till you make it type of person, because I'd be kind of terrified that someone would put me to the test and then I wouldn't be able to perform, which would then make me feel bad about myself. And then the whole cycle begins. But I can say that, like I was saying earlier, I do try to live completely by example. So that keeps me on my toes, because I'm a human being. There's things that I want to do too, that a lot of people may not find to be a good example. So it keeps me on the straight and narrow. But here's the deal. If you're always after achievements and you can switch that idea off of yourself onto other people. So if your achievements are to benefit other people, like living by example. So if I'm able to endure with my introverted sensing, build the habits, make good choices, have very strong values that I'm convicted of, that have been tested, then being an example can help other people. People need to know, they need to find people that they can look up to. And I'm not trying to, that's not my ultimate goal, is to be a person to look up to. But honestly, I've studied some things on like the matron archetype. So as you get older, being a woman that can be wise. And so I do constant research. I try to make great decisions so that other people can mirror me. Because if that's going to be, but where has the struggle with that been? There's no glory in it. That's the truth. If you are Enneagram 3 and you're all about the glory, you're all about the big paychecks, and you're all about the big house, and you're all about the flashy car and those kind of achievements, this is not the life that I've chosen, is really not the one that would feel fulfilling as an Enneagram 3, because I get excited over my Google reviews. and I, I get texts that tell me how I'm helping people, but to be honest, they're not really badges that anyone else sees, right? They're not achievements that anyone else sees. So I've had to learn how to temper my expectations, meaning I do want to live truthful. So what is my ultimate goal? That's what I had to think of. What is my purpose? What am I doing? Even with all the achievements, because they become empty after a while and they become old. Like I ran the Bulls in Pamplona. I did that when I was 16 though, and I am going to be 45 this year. So it really doesn't matter anymore. So your achievements kind of decay over time if you think about it. And so I'm trying to find something right now when we're talking about going from deceit to veracity. I'm trying to get to a place where, again, I'm as authentic as can be, because they call us charming. Charming could be seen as very manipulative, that you're just going around and you're just trying to, change people's thoughts. And it is true. I will say this. I am trying to be influencing. There is no doubt about that. I make no qualms about that either. If I'm spending time with you, because I wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I spend all day doing and producing. And so therefore, if I'm spending time with you, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm trying to influence you in a certain way. However, I'm trying to do it to help you. I'm using my experiences. I'm very transparent. I'm very transparent and open to what I've been through and the mistakes I have made in order to help you. So the charming aspects of threes, I'm sure it can be seen as manipulative, but I generally like people. I generally care about people. This studying of MBTI or Enneagram 3, every ESTJ out there should take a hot minute to learn about MBTI and Enneagram, because we can walk around not giving anyone grace. No one grace. I remember when my kids were younger and I was homeschooling them and they saw the Judge Judy show and they're like, "Mom, that's you on that's you." Right? So we have this reputation. I've heard people say to me, "Hey, are you like Darth Vader from Star Wars?" These are not necessarily good images of us, but we do care deeply. And so, but for Enneagram 3s, if we can switch to a very authentic life where everything we're going after can benefit the society as a whole or just other people in our lives, if we can change it, our energy can change a small part of lives. That's what I truly believe. So if we're willing to put through all the energy to our achievements, and we are so driven and we are so results oriented and we do work hard, then again, switching that mindset from our personal achievements to others makes us more authentic presenting to other people.
That's well said. Inspirational, and it is true. Personality typology can be life-changing if used in the right hands. It is clear that you've done a lot of personal growth, Wendy. And so the defense mechanism of the Enneagram 3 is identification. And this is used to avoid failure and to maintain the self-image of being successful. And so there's a pressure to keep up with a winning image that might prevent you from wanting to do certain things that make other people see you poorly or in a dim light. Something Wendy does that's very Enneagram 3 is that she looks at you, looking at her, looking at you. So she's able to gauge, I know how people are viewing me. I just know my social image. And it took a long time for her to do what's right for her because she's so aware of what other people will view her. That impacts her a lot. And she's aware of her reputation. She's aware of her status. And she helps other people achieve. She initially is a very good achiever, and her life purpose is helping others through her life. So that's awesome. Look at you. And are there any traits you relate to of the Enneagram 3 that we haven't discussed yet, Wendy?
I would say that I am very adaptable, meaning I will go into a room and survey and determine where am I best placed. And I put myself in all different kinds of situations, but I am very image conscious. And what you were saying earlier, like I said, when I got divorced, man, talk about the whole world crashing in as far as my personal image. I mean, I know people will say divorce is difficult, but divorce is really difficult when you apparently painted quite the picture of marriage. And so now I have to, you know what I describe it as? I describe it as that, you know, the game Candyland. So where I started at 18, when I got on my own, I was making it all the way up the game. And I was like so close to the big castle at the top, which I don't know exactly what that looked like, but it felt like I was getting closer. Maybe when my kids finally grew up. But then my divorce, I felt like I tumbled. That's how I describe it. I tumbled right down all the way to the bottom. It was such a humbling moment. And we chose for it. I mean, it's not even like we actually made that decision. But yes, I'm very adaptable, meaning when I was young, I would have teachers that would complain. They would try to give me detention. They would tell me, where can I move you in the room where you will not make a friend? And I said, quite frankly, nowhere. I will adapt to any situation just about that I'm placed in, because I do love people. I find value in everyone's story. I find value in everyone's story.
Yeah, there's a shape-shifting quality to the 3 or heart types that are the 2 and 3 for different reasons to be the most pleasing to the other person looking at you.
Actually, you know what's funny? Antonia's obsessed about the reviews you leave for Personality Hacker 2. She's a 3.
What? What do you mean?
Antonia's a 3, and she goes nuts when everybody leaves a rating for Personality Hacker 2.
Oh, I know. And you can barely get, I have SE clients, they can't remember to leave reviews. It drives me totally crazy. Because I know they want to. This is not a me thing. They just don't remember. Like, oh, I forgot. Seriously, I forgot. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
Joyce,
gosh.
Antonia's obsessed with reviews too.
Huh?
I was telling Joyce that Antonia's obsessed with reviews too.
Yeah, you Enneagram 3s.
But you know what? I'm really picky about my reviews because I look at them and I'm like, did I really do that for the person? Or are they like BSing? But then I figured it out. So
yeah, you figured out the key. We've covered the Enneagram types. And so I know the audience will be wondering, do you guys know your wings, your instinctual variants? So feel free to share.
I know my instincts are I am SPSO. The like taking care of things and myself and stuff like that, that's just like second nature. Can't avoid that. And then dealing with groups, SX is definitely not where I lean. And then it's like 2 is definitely my emotional center. Like 3 and 4 are nowhere near any bit of my personality ever. And then but interestingly enough, I lean towards 9 every so often. I will take a step back, let other people decide stuff, get out of the fight, and things like that. Tendency towards laziness at times, so like there is a bit of 9 wrapped in there sometimes. But and then all the description of 6s they sound overly dramatic to me, although I could potentially see how they're planning for catastrophes. I do that to a limited practical degree. But then I think I personally enjoy 7s. So like that's a pleasant place for me to be is around that kind of energy. So that's very, very attractive for me.
How about you, Heather?
Yeah, I'm an 8 wing 7. I don't identify with 9 at all. I quite often find the 9 energy or the 9 stereotype a little bit off-putting. I mean, to me, the concept of taking a nap in the middle of the day or going off grid or backing away to kind of make sure that everything is smooth or not putting my choices ahead because I'm wanting everybody else to be happy. That's all that doesn't connect with me at all. So definitely 8 wing 7, but I think I've lent into that 7 wing much more strongly when I was younger. So spent my 20s and 30s pretty much bouncing around the world, being quite 7ish, and just bouncing from experience to experience, traveling the world, doing jobs which took me everywhere, not wanting to kind of be in one place for very long, picking up friends everywhere. And then I think I got married pretty late and had my kids in my 40s. And I think that has, I don't know if it certainly pulled me back towards the center of 8 a little bit more. A bit of 6 comes up as well because that's in my Tritype. I don't think I go into 9, but I've definitely kind of calmed away from that hyperactive FOMO kind of 7. I mean, there was a time when if I wasn't at the party in town, I'd have massive FOMO. Now, even if you said to me, let's go to a party, I'd be like, no, let's stay, let's stay home and chill. I mean, that's quite a shift, but yeah. And stacking is SO, SX, SP. The SO is big. So wanting to always do things with and around people and motivate people and bring them together and help them to achieve. I have to kind of always plug into what the group is thinking and feeling and kind of be part of that.
So there are some ESTJs who are the work hard, party hard variation. And then there are some ESTJs who are work hard, relax later once there's time. And so, yeah, so it seems like you're 7.
I think I used to be the first one for sure. I used to take pride in the fact that I didn't need to sleep and I could just keep on going. And obviously age has kind of had a bit of a part to play in telling me, no, you really can't keep going because and you can't have a couple of glasses of wine on a school night because you're going to feel terrible the next morning at this age. But yeah, I think I now am more in that I'll work and I'll finish it off and then let's see.
Got it. Yeah, it's tempered you down a bit. All right. Thank you for sharing. And Wendy?
I have no idea. Like anyone who knows me, I know all kinds of stuff about cognitive functions. That's where I spend all my time. Like I said, I actually used to test as a 1. Those were my homeschooling days. So maybe I was trying to change the world back then. But honestly, Joyce, you're the one that's just opened up my whole world. And you sent me on the path of the Tritype, like 136, I believe. And I was watching the Taskmaster and I thought, oh my goodness, like this, a lot of this does exactly sound like me for sure. But I honestly, I'm so sorry to everyone, but I have no, I have no idea about anything other than that I'm an Enneagram 3. I identify with it. I can see some things in a 1. Oh, and also, I think it's the Enneagram, is it 2? That's very people oriented.
Yeah.
I'm very people oriented. I'm more of a 2 than towards a 4.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm not the 4, like I'm not that way. So
yeah, Wendy, you're probably a 3-wing too. Now that we've dived into the most common Enneagram types for the ESTJ, I hope that helped the audience members understand the Enneagram type spread that this personality type can have. And you can have types of ESTJs that are outside of these Enneagram types too. This is just the most common trends. I hope that you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care. Bye.